Have you ever felt like the world was trying to tell you something? A whisper on the wind, a feeling in your bones? Well, for a young sea otter named Otto, this wasn't just a feeling, it was his reality. While other otters played and hunted, Otto floated on his back, his furry ears tuned to a frequency no one else could perceive. He heard the ocean's voice. The gentle lapping of waves against the shore wasn't just water meeting land, it was a conversation. The currents told him stories of ancient, forgotten creatures that once roamed the deep, of shimmering shoals of fish that danced in the sunlight, and of storms that raged with the fury of a wounded giant. The ocean was alive and it spoke to him. At first, the other sea creatures, the playful dolphins, the wise old turtles, and the grumpy crabs, dismissed Otto's claims. They saw a daydreamer, a pup lost in his own world. Whispers in the waves, a gruff old walrus would scoff. It's just the tide, boy, nothing more, but Otto knew better. He felt the joy in the high tide and the sorrow in the low. One day, the whispers changed. The ocean's voice, once a gentle melody, became a panicked chorus. The currents churned with anxiety, the waves crashed with a desperate plea. Otto listened, his small heart pounding in his chest. The ocean spoke of a creeping darkness, a shadow spreading from the world above, the world of humans. It was a poison, a silent, invisible threat that was choking the coral, silencing the reefs, and turning the vibrant waters gray. The tides warned him of a great imbalance, a coming disaster that would unravel the very fabric of their world. This wasn't a storm he could ride out, it was an unmaking. Fear gripped the ocean, but Otto felt something else too, a calling. He couldn't just float by and let his home be destroyed. The ocean had chosen him as its listener, and now it needed him to be its voice. With a determined flick of his tail, Otto set off. His journey was not one of strength, but of listening. He left the comfort of his kelp forest and ventured into the vast, unknown expanse of the sea. His first stop was a magnificent coral reef, a place that should have been bursting with color and life. Instead, he found a ghost city. The corals were bleached white, like skeletons reaching for a sun they could no longer feel. The vibrant fish that once called it home were gone, replaced by a haunting silence. There he met a school of clownfish, huddled together in the last remaining anemone. Their stripes were dull, their movements sluggish. They spoke of a creeping warmth that stole their color and their energy. They had been arguing for weeks, blaming each other, blaming the currents, blaming their luck. Otto didn't offer solutions or take sides. He simply listened. He listened to their fear, their loss, and their despair. As they shared their stories, their anger began to soften, replaced by a shared grief. For the first time, they saw each other not as competitors, but as fellow survivors. Leaving the reef behind, Otto swam deeper, into the twilight zone where sunlight struggled to reach. Here, he encountered a pod of majestic sperm whales. They were the keepers of the ocean's oldest songs, but their voices were now filled with confusion. The noise from the human world above the constant, grinding hum of ships and the deafening blasts of sonar had shattered their ancient language. They couldn't communicate, couldn't navigate, couldn't find their way. They were lost in their own home. The whales were proud and solitary, not used to asking for help. But Otto's quiet presence was disarming. He floated near them, his small body a stark contrast to their immense size, and he listened. He listened to the cacophony that plagued them, feeling the disorienting vibrations through his own skin. He shared the clownfish's story of the dying reef, connecting their different struggles with a common thread. The whales, in their deep, rumbling voices, began to speak of a new song, a song of warning, a song of unity. Otto's journey took him from the sunlit surface to the crushing dark of the abyss. He met giant squids who spoke of strange, metallic monsters invading their depths. He met ancient sea turtles who had seen their nesting grounds disappear. He met pods of dolphins whose playful clicks had turned to frantic calls for help. In every encounter, Otto did the same thing. He listened, he didn't preach or command. He didn't have a grand plan. He simply created a space for these disparate, frightened communities to be heard. He became a bridge connecting the plight of the clownfish to the confusion of the whales, the fear of the squids to the sorrow of the turtles. News of the little sea otter who listened spread on the currents. Creatures who had been rivals for generations, who had ignored each other's territories and competed for resources, began to seek him out. A council of the sea began to form, not in a specific place, but in a shared understanding. A grumpy lobster who guarded his cave fiercely found common ground with a wandering manta ray. A territorial shark, usually feared, found himself listening to the anxieties of a tiny shrimp. They realized their individual problems were all symptoms of the same sickness. The human-caused disaster wasn't just a bleached reef or a noisy shipping lane. It was a threat to them all. Fighting amongst themselves was a luxury they could no longer afford. Inspired by Otto's example, they started listening to each other. The whales used their powerful voices to carry the message across vast distances. The dolphins, with their intelligence, devised new ways to navigate the noise. The turtles, with their ancient wisdom, guided others to safer waters. The tiny krill, in their billions, shifted their migration patterns, a subtle but powerful act of defiance that changed the currents. It was a symphony of cooperation, conducted by a small otter who knew the power of listening. Their combined efforts began to have an effect. They guided great currents to flush a pocket of pollution away from a vulnerable nursery. They created a cone of silence around a pod of birthing whales by coordinating their movements. They led a rescue of fish trapped in a ghost net. They weren't fighting the human world directly. They were healing their own. They were restoring the balance from within. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ocean began to respond. The whispers Otto heard started to change again. The panic receded, replaced by a note of hope. The tides grew calmer, the current steadier. A faint blush of color returned to a patch of coral. A lost whale calf found its mother. The ocean was beginning to heal itself. Otto returned not to his old home, but to a new one in Ocean United. He was no longer seen as a daydreamer. He was revered. He was the voice of the sea, the listener. He had taught the entire ocean a lesson that the world above had yet to learn, that the greatest strength doesn't come from making the most noise, but from being willing to listen. And so, if you ever stand by the shore and close your eyes, you might just hear it. A whisper in the waves, a story on the tide. It's the voice of Otto and the voice of the ocean, reminding us all to listen. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you next time.